Well, hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Well, per usual, guys, we have kind of a little bit of a crazy day. And actually, there's even more craziness than I originally anticipated because I found out that James O'Keefe was officially out as the CEO of Project Veritas earlier today when kind of the news started breaking and when they say James O'Keefe resigned, I was like, yeah, he didn't resign. He was removed. He was forced to resign. But then after I set up this stream, I found out that there is video of the 45-minute farewell address that James O'Keefe gave. And apparently Alec has already watched it but I haven't yet is the thing, Alec. And so one of the things we're going to do on this stream today is if you have not seen, when the news first started breaking that James had been put on this leave from being the CEO of Project Veritas, what did I say on the stream that night? Actually, you might not know if you're watching on YouTube because YouTube removed my stream. They said I was bullying people, which I don't believe that I was. You can still find it on Odyssey if you want to. I still have the raw file and everything. But what I said on the stream that night was that I didn't buy any of the bullshit the board was saying. Why? Because there was no video of it. And if there was any organization that should have had video of these wrongdoings that they had accused James O'Keefe of, it should be goddamn Project Veritas. So I didn't believe that this was James's fault from the very beginning. It took me like an hour to get there once I went from like, oh, breaking news to, oh, yeah, this is all bullshit. And then that was later confirmed when we actually read the full memo that Timcast got that was from Project Veritas employees to the board talking about how James was such a terrible boss to work for. And exactly like I said, none of it was real. It was stuff that was fabricated, blown out of proportion. I have seen dozens of memos like that in my time. If you don't know me, I'm an organizational psychologist. I've helped organizations. Project Veritas really should have hired me before they pulled this bullshit. Project Veritas could have saved themselves a whole lot of money had they hired me or someone like me. It doesn't need to be me specifically. But I've seen this play out before. I know how to identify bullshit because I've seen both the real thing and I've seen the fake thing. And this was the fake thing from the very, very, very beginning. And so I'm really sad about this. I know a lot of you are really sad. I know that a lot of you are unsubscribing from Project Veritas, which I think is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I want to remind everyone that I did write an article about this. When was it? Well, like a week and a half ago now. Let me just pop it in the chat. And I did write an article about this, basically explaining that it is the nonprofit structure of Project Veritas that kind of got James in trouble. A lot of people are saying, how can James O'Keefe be forced out of his own company that he started, that he built? Well, the answer is when you make something a nonprofit, you no longer run the company. The board runs the company. And if the board decides to backstab you and betray you, then they can do that. And I know that's not a reality that people want to hear. I know that's not something that that people really understand. How can this all just be taken away from James O'Keefe? But that is the reality, and that is why I have stayed on my own in terms of doing the work I'm doing. I'm very committed to that. And guess who else is committed to that? Mike Cernovich. Because the other thing I want to do on this stream is I want to read this article that Mike Cernovich wrote. Now, I have mixed feelings about Mike Cernovich, if I'm honest about it. I really do. But I think there are sometimes when Mike Cernovich is just really dead on correct about things. Like Mike Cernovich for me is either like a massive hit or a massive miss. Like when I think he gets stuff wrong, it's like so often left field for me. I'm like, what the hell are you even talking about? But when he nails it on the bullseye for me, he nails it on the bullseye. And Mike Cernovich wrote this on his Substack, basically, I guess, explaining why he won't go to work for a company like this. And on that point, I am in complete and total agreement with Mike Cernovich. There is a reason I have not gone to work for any of these shill organizations, because you're always beholden to a master. You're always beholden to a political agenda. You can no longer tell people the truth. You have to tell people the approved truth. And so I want to read his essay on this and get his next step there. But before we do any of that, I just want to say I believe that James O'Keefe is going to be fine. I don't think that anyone needs to worry about James O'Keefe. James O'Keefe has an absolute absurd amount of support. He's going to have all the donors that he needs. There are going to be so many big. I mean, I even saw. Did anyone see Diana? Like, and by the way, Diana is someone who is like a very well known conservative donor. I've met her several times. She is a lovely woman. I've had dinner with her. I've been to their house. It's like she is a lovely, 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 lovely woman. And she made a video because she and her husband were the ones who the Project Veritas staff said James treated very rudely after he asked them for a check for $75,000. And she actually did a video saying, this is not real. It was blown out of proportion. He was just a little under stress. He took the picture. It wasn't a big deal. Everyone was trying to get something from him. I totally understood. And so, like, James is going to have people like Diana on his side. And Diana is a good person to have on your side. Let me tell you what, she really is. Again, lovely lady. And she's not the only person that he's going to have on his side, okay? So I don't want anyone to worry about him. He built up this organization once, and guess what? James started this organization when he was a lot younger. He has probably learned a lot from this experience. And he's going to be able to put all of that into his next venture to make sure that never happens again. He's also going to be able to cherry pick. I bet he's going to be able to cherry pick the staff that he's going to pull away from Project Veritas to help him in this new venture. And if he doesn't, he's probably the one that trained half of them anyway. So he can just do it again. So he's going to be fine. This is going to be, it sucks. And I know it sucks. And I'm really looking forward to watching his full, and we're going to watch the full statement, guys, because I want to see what he actually said. Now, if there's enough time after we watch the full statement, and I do hope that there is, we're going to talk about something else. Because the Oompa Loompas are now non-binary. This is a real story. I cannot even believe that this is the reality that we live in. The publisher of Roald Dahl's books, to include Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, to include James and the Giant Peach, to include Matilda, to include all of the other catalog of Roald Dahl's books. They have hired a team of sensitivity readers to go through and remove offensive and gendered language from the most classic children's literature that there is. And in the course of doing it, they have made the Oompa Loompas non-binary. And I just... Listen, if we're going to suffer through this Project Veritas, James O'Keefe madness, we have to be able to find the humor in the absurdity that is the world. And I think non-binary Oompa Loompas are a pretty absurd thing. So we're going to talk about that as well. And if I have time, I've got some other things I want to talk about too. But guys, before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone that please subscribe to my Substack if you have not already. Carlyn, Karlyn .substack.com. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel too. I do streaming almost every single day of the week. During the week, I stream at 5. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On Saturdays, I start streaming at 6 for Socialism Saturday. And on Sundays, I typically rest unless there's like something else going on. Occasionally, I do late night streams and things too, depending on if there's something I want to watch or something going on that I need to talk about. So please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Please make sure you ring that bell for notifications, because sometimes I don't always go live at the scheduled time. I go live at surprise times, and you want to make sure you're going to get notified if I haven't had a chance to put it out on social media or things like that. But so definitely subscribe to the channel. Please mount that like button if you haven't already. But if you are not subscribed to my Substack yet, please subscribe to my Substack, because my Substack is actually going to be my home base for content moving forward. I'm not doing YouTube and Odyssey and Rockfin and Rumble and all that stuff. But if you want my really, really, really good content, you got to read it. I'm sorry. I'm a much better writer than I am at doing this video streaming stuff. And so there's always new content on the Substack. Like I said, people who are subscribed to my Substack, they saw the Oompa Loompas story yesterday. I also did a podcast about this. I have a new article about knowing your values, which is one of our key things for fighting back against the woke left. Last night, I was feeling a little sassy. Last night around 1 a.m., 2 a.m., something like that. And I put together this Substack article that illustrates for you how effed up the world really is. Like, and we're going to go through this real quick if we have time. But man, if you like, I am starting to. Like, this is an idea I have. I'm basically going to start framing myself as a writer of real life dystopia because I really do feel like we're living in a real life dystopian reality, and most people don't know exactly how dystopian it is. Steven says your Substack is gold. I really do appreciate that, Steven. And thank you to Christopher Perry over on Rockfin for the $10 tip. Wondering how many Project Veritas donors move right on over. Project Veritas cut their own legs out from beneath them. I absolutely agree with that. And I appreciate you guys watching on Rockfin, Odyssey, Rumble, all the other alternative platforms that I'm streaming on. I do appreciate that. Guys, I am also doing a challenge on my Substack this month, and I'm trying to get 550 new subscribers to my Substack. And guess what? I only need like 5 more. So if you've been enjoying my work, you've been appreciating my work, please consider a paid subscription to my Substack. You can do it for $5 a month. You can do it for $50 a year. You can also do a $150 founding membership if that's going to work better for you. Or you can subscribe for free. Free is fine as well. At least you're going to get my email updates. But guys, if you can't afford to support my work right now, please share the content. Sharing the content really helps me out. Share the videos, share the articles, get it out there. Help me expand my reach. The reason that I ask for paid support is because I never want to find myself in a position like James O'Keefe. I am building my own little Unwoke empire here. I'm going to provide you with the most unique and nuanced Unwoke content on the internet. I'm curating all the news stories you need to know. I'm explaining them to you in the context of how the woke left actually operates in the real world, how they're going to show up in your real lives, what you need to know and what you need to do about it to fight back against this cultural revolution. And I am never going to get myself in a position where I report to any board because I want to be able to tell you the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts, and sometimes the truth are not truths that you or other people want to hear. And so the only way that I can do that is to operate completely independently, make my Unwoke empire into a private entrepreneurial enterprise. I really hope James O'Keefe does the same thing when he rebuilds. He needs to make it into a private company that he has total and complete control over, because the minute that we start giving other people control over things is the minute it all gets effed up. And that's the minute where the truth starts being obfuscated. And that's the minute where political agendas need to be met. And I'm not playing that game. I want to report to you and only to you, but I need your help in order to be able to do that. So if I could get 5 more people, just 5 more, to become a paid subscriber to my Substack this month, then I will meet my goal. And then we can start working on next month's goal, because I have certain numbers that I need to hit. We're running this exactly like a business. All right, guys, with that out of the way, let's get into it. And I know that some of you have already watched this video from James O'Keefe, but I have not watched this video from James O'Keefe. So guys, let me know in the chat, who has seen this farewell address that James O'Keefe gave to Project Veritas staff? Let me know. But I want to watch the whole thing, and I'm going to kind of do commentary on it when I feel the need to, but it is about 45 minutes. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to wrap it up, hopefully like 6:15 or so, because I do want to be able to talk about the Oompa Loompas as well. Alex says, I have, and it's crazy. Excellent. If Alec the Potato is telling us that we have to watch this because it's so crazy, then we just got to watch it. All right, guys, let's do it.
You know, we're here on President's Day. I wrote these so I could get the words right, you know, but it's obviously from the heart, and I wanted to do this in person with you all, not over a Zoom or Teams, and you know, he's going to film it, and these are intended just for the family here at Project Veritas. You know, this is just for us. I recognize that when you send something out to 60 people,
bullshit. They wouldn't be filming it. James O'Keefe would not have been filming it if he intended it just for the family at Project Veritas. James, don't bullshit a bullshitter. I'm not saying anything bad about that, by the way. I'm just saying that. Does it have captions? I don't know if I can do captions, Sam, because this is a Twitter video. But if you turn on I don't know if you can turn on if you're doing automated captions as you're watching on my channel. I can't turn on captions, guys. I'm sorry. There's no captions to turn on. I would if I could.
But I'm not going to do that today. So I just wanted to tell you the truth. So So I'm going to read this, and I'm going to try my best to, speak from the heart, but I did write these words, and I want to tell you what's going on. So here we go. It's going to take me about 15 minutes to do this. Journalism is reporting.
Okay, people are saying, here's what needs to happen. If people have a video that I can watch with captions, that you need to tell me where the video is. The full video. Okay? Because saying that you saw, like, I want to be able to solve the problem for you guys. I really, really do. But saying I saw a video with captions does not tell me where that video is. I would love to be able to provide the captions to you. I just don't know where they are. This is the only video that I've seen. I had meetings all day up until this point. Okay, Tim Pool has it on his channel. He has the whole video. Did he just put it up on his channel? Hang on. He just put the whole video up on his channel. I do not see the whole video on Tim Pool's channel. I'm looking at his Tim Pool channel right now. I do not see the video. Oh, there it is. Okay, never mind. I did find it. Okay, you guys are right. Okay, hang on one sec. One sec, please. I am rather loath to give Tim Pool the views, but whatever. Okay, captions on. All right, take two.
So
there we go.
I'm going to read this, and I'm going to try my best to, speak from the heart, but I did write these words, and I want to tell you what's going on. So here we go. It's going to take me about 15 minutes to do this. Journalism is reporting things powerful people want kept hidden for the wrong reasons, moral wrongs, bad behaviors, as journalists were the custodians of the public's conscience. And as we've gone deeper and deeper exposing and illuminating corruption, the lies hidden from public view, the line that separates good and evil becomes more clear. Not just in the institutions we investigate, but within one another. Throughout my 13 years doing this, our mission has evolved from simply being about exposing the truth with some hidden cameras to something more transcendental, giving people hope, right? That's what we do. And I'm going to stand here because I just feel like I'm filming a video for the audience. And as we ascended into that higher purpose, which I think we all understand that we have suffered through triumph and disaster along the way in a similar fashion to what I wrote about in my book. The first chapter was called Suffering. So the line that separates good and evil passes not through the states, nor classes, nor political parties, but right through every single human heart, to quote Solzhenitsyn. So that line in the sand becomes more clear the deeper we go in investigating these powerful institutions. So over the last few weeks, I have felt a lot of despair and seen a lot of evil, and felt overcome with various emotions over the last few weeks. You could say I've seen glimpses of heaven and hell, of darkness and light. But what I take away from these is the gratitude that I have for many of you, for most of you. And there is such goodness in so many of you that I have seen, and I am grateful for that. And the generosity and goodwill we have steadily built over the past 13 years with so many people. I've received thousands of text messages and phone calls from people all over the world concerned about my well-being. But as I was going through this process, I reflected upon my appreciation for many of you. What makes us great is that we do this work because we actually believe in it, right? We actually believe in this. It shocks people that we do, and we have a passion for it, and we have principle. Like I know, we don't sell out. I think that's fair, at least most of us. We have a passion for doing the right thing in a visual way, no matter what. That's what binds us. I know many of you have experienced this despair alongside of me in the last couple weeks. One of you just told me the other day that you'd go work at Walmart at the night shift so that you could do this during the day. That's what one of you said to me. I believe you. Rather than sell out. In fact, I know this is true for many of you and many more out there who wish to be part of this. It's true. I remember back in the beginning, 13 years ago, when I had like no money, I would have to use bubble gum, duct tape. I think you were around during that time. I keep looking at you because I've known you since Andrew Breitbart. And my grandmother's chinchilla, I literally had to place a Project Veritas sticker on a piece of cardboard that I ripped off from my dad's cardboard and stick it to a microphone at Radio Shack because I had no money to buy a flag mic. And this was after experiencing a meteoric high of the acorn story. I was up and I was down, and I was broke again, and I was arrested, and then crashed down to a meteoric low, back in the carriage house, resorting once again to bubble gum and duct tape to achieve the NPR investigation that took us yet again to a meteoric high. I was so broke that I had to scribble my name and phone numbers on pieces of paper because I had no business cards. And so the saga continues. Back then, there were no employees and no budget. But I felt the same sensation this week. I feel the sensation right now. As Steve Jobs once wrote about being fired from Apple, the company he founded, quote, "The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again." Less sure about everything.
You know, there is something very beautiful about a beginner's mindset. I write about this in my first book. It's called Zen Your Work. It's about putting mindfulness into your work experience. And, you know, it is a very liberating experience to go back to that kind of like entry level because, yeah, it can be hard to lose everything that you've worked for 13 years, but there's a lightness to starting again. And it also can relieve someone of burden. And so the reason that I say that is that, you know, everything can be interpreted as either a good or a bad thing. It just depends on your perspective. Some might see James O'Keefe getting pushed out. He did not resign. He got pushed out. I'm going to say it again and again and again. Some might perceive him getting pushed out of the company that he built as a really negative thing, as a low point. But what happened when Steve Jobs got pushed out of Apple? I love that he's taking this perspective. It shows you that his mindset is in the right place. Exactly, Stephen. Hitting rock bottom releases you. It releases you from burden. It releases you from responsibility. And you can start again. It strips you of all of the unnecessary bullshit. And it forces you to look again at what are the most important things to you. So if you ever find yourself in this type of position, about like, you know, you've worked so hard for something and you achieved your goal and then it just gets stripped out of you, because many of you are going to find yourself in a position like this over the course of your life. It may not be this specifically, but it'll be like the similar thing. Remember that your perspective is everything. If you lose a job someday and that is a job you've had your entire life or your entire adult life and you just don't know who you are without this job, that might free you up to do the thing you're supposed to do. So it's important that you remind yourself that not every ending is a bad thing. An ending can simply be a new beginning.
Freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. So back then I trudged on from the back of a stretch limo in DC, two guys, I was on federal probation, so I couldn't be there, but two of my volunteers dressed like Muslim Brotherhood fundamentalists armed with hidden cameras. Project Veritas was born again in 2011 for a second time. A couple of donors eventually became 100,000 donors present day, 13 years later. After almost a decade and a half of 85-hour work weeks, sometimes traveling 300 days a year, I am on the road, packing multiple meetings in a day, and plenty of blood, sweat, and tears, the likes of which I could never have possibly fathomed. The external threats and pressure inflicted against myself and some of us has been unimaginable. I'm going to summarize them. Handcuffed by the FBI on two separate occasions, 12 years apart, having my phones confiscated and private information leaked to the New York Times, being placed on effective house arrest for 3 years between May of 2010 and May of 2013, being sued dozens of times, being served two separate criminal grand jury subpoenas in New Hampshire in the last 10 years, getting pursued in a high-speed chase by a New Jersey education union official on Interstate 80 in Passaic, deposed many times, suffered through mediation with insurance companies where they had all of our emails. They had everything, but they evidently didn't have anything on me. Getting my home raided by the FBI having my loved ones put in handcuffs in the hallway, and having our office destroyed by a hurricane, literally a hurricane, which forced us into a temporary workplace before rebuilding and stirred up disgruntled employees, including grievances about me, which I will get to in a minute. The list goes on. Even so, as a former board member told me 10 years ago, Project Veritas will never be stopped from the outside. It will only be because we stopped ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll get to that too in a minute. Prophetic as it may be, that is exactly where we find ourselves in the situation today. A situation where I've been stripped of my authority as CEO.
Forced out.
Removed from the board of directors. I bet you didn't know that.
Forced
I'll get
out.
to that in a minute. Contrary to what public statements may say.
Not resigned. Forced out.
And by the way, I have copies for this. I will not give them to you yet. I will give them to you after I'm done. And there are board minute meetings, which you'll all get a copy of, that read as follows. Quote, James O'Keefe indefinitely suspended as CEO without compensation.
Wow.
Yes.
February 10th.
Quote,
February
indefinite
10th.
suspension of James.
Are you shitting me? Are you shitting me? They lied. Project Veritas about in their initial statements about this lied. Project Veritas flat out lied. Everyone go fucking unsubscribe and unfollow Project Veritas right now. They lied. If you haven't already, I know many of you have. They lied.
O'Keefe from the board, dated February 10th, 5 days before the statement, saying that I'm still the CEO. I don't know why this is happening now, or specifically why this is happening suddenly right now. As you know, at the helm of Veritas, I've never allowed or entertained speculation. I only report the facts. I think you know this. You're involved in hiring. But don't you know that so many people want to go beyond the facts? I'm adamant that I'm only going to stick to the facts. So much so that sometimes we don't hire people if they want to pontificate and opine about what's going on in society. And I've had people leave because they don't agree with this vision, okay, of what a journalist ought to do. But fortunately, I have recordings and documents to back up everything I'm about to tell you. So everything I'm about to tell you, I have documentation and proof. So you don't have to say I wasn't there. You can listen to it and watch it for yourself.
See, this is how it's done. This is what I said from the very beginning when all this bullshit started. I was like, Project Veritas doesn't have video and recording of any of this, and they want me to believe that James O'Keefe is a horrible, impossible person to work for. And like I've always said, there's no doubt in my mind that James O'Keefe is an asshole. I do think he is, but that's not the same thing. Like sometimes you need the asshole to lead the organization, right? And that's not the same thing as him being untenable to work for. It just means that he's a demanding boss. I mean, demanding bosses exist all over the world. Powerful organizations get built on the backs of demanding bosses. There's nothing wrong with that. And I said from the very effing beginning that if they didn't have video, I didn't believe them. James O'Keefe has video. James O'Keefe has audio. James O'Keefe has documents. That's why I believe him.
So I'm about a quarter of the way through here. Bear with me. For the last 13 years, I've been the same person I've always been, probably better than I used to be. These are adjectives some people used. Tough, hard charging, driven, creative, exacting. I have extremely high standards and somewhat disorganized. I don't ask you how your Thanksgiving was, okay? Or the names of your siblings, although a good leader probably should. I don't do that. I ask a lot of you, but I don't ever ask you to do anything I haven't myself done and continue to do. I haven't always been the most compassionate leader, and that is admittedly a fault of mine, something I need to work on. But I remember when I was back in the care.
Most successful CEOs are not compassionate. What is happening, and for everyone who took my DISC workshop last week, you know this, James O'Keefe is a dominant style on the DISC profile. Basically what that means is he's a hard ass to work for, and he doesn't care about your feelings, and he's not going to make small talk. The vast majority of CEOs in this country have exactly the same profile as James O'Keefe does. It's just the way it goes. He is not any worse than the majority of people running businesses in this country. Maybe not warm and fuzzy, maybe not going to make small talk, maybe not going to ask about your family, but sometimes the asshole is required to build the business that needs to get built. He played the role he needed to play.
Church house in the beginning, there was a journalist in the beginning, and he pointed this out to me. So, you need to be more compassionate. Ask me about my life. And it hurt him that I wasn't more compassionate towards him. Personally, I told him it was difficult for me to change myself. But this experience stayed with me, and I always have known this about myself. I've tried to do a better job of that, but the truth is I've been very hurried, very busy, pressed for time every day, trying to pack in so much in a day. I think you all know this in meetings. I'm busy because I'm trying to get so much done in an hour, all the while moving at the speed of light to raise as much money, to hire more people, to take care of you guys in a fundamental way, although I may not be good at communicating the reasons why I am that way. I'm doing as much as I humanly possibly can so I could build this place out and do more.
$22 million.
And that's what we did every year, each year since 2010. Growing every year, sometimes doubling our revenue, doubling our impact. I have a chart here, which again, I'm going to hand to you, the chart of the growth every year. I have never slowed down. I recognize that perhaps I should, but number one, there's a trade-off to slowing down. And number two, I need the right leaders around me in order to do that.
Thank you, Nick.
So along the way, there has been much turnover, replacing people with better people. This was painful to me and to many of you who witnessed it. But that has always been happening since day one. There was turnover 10 years ago when I had to fire a friend from college. Let's just maybe hold off on that until the end. So I'll make sure that everyone has a copy of this. And I don't intend to publish this. This is for you guys internally. I had 10 years ago, I had to fire a friend from Rutgers. That hurt me. It took me months to get over this. I never discussed this. I felt for him, but it was the conflict that ate at me, but I had to do it. See, leadership has a price, and results often come at a human cost. Maybe fewer in this world, present day, are willing to pay that price. Many people want the fruits of leadership, such as its power, results, Twitter followings, secondary effects. But the price of the responsibilities, burdens, trials.
You know, there was something that happened when the Pfizer videos were coming out, and I kind of was like, it didn't strike me as weird at the time, but now in retrospect, it kind of strikes me as weird, and I want to share it with you guys. The chief of staff at Project Veritas, his name is Eric. Eric is one of the signers of the memo that got sent to the board with all of the grievances against James. The chief of staff on Twitter was going out of his way to try to make sure as many Project Veritas employees were getting as many Twitter followers as possible. Like, he was actually making this a game. He's like, and they were framing it in terms of like, oh, look at all these amazing employees in the Pfizer video. Like, it's like, especially the guy who like held the camera as like he pushed the Pfizer guy who was like, you know, just going out of his mind. And I actually thought it was kind of cool at the time. I was like, oh, they're promoting all the employees. And the chief of staff was like, let's get this person to 100,000 followers and this person to 100,000 followers. And it was kind of nice. But now looking back at it and listening to James say, you know, leadership isn't just about Twitter followers. I'm kind of wondering, was the chief of staff doing that because he knew this was coming and he wanted to make sure that other people at Project Veritas had Twitter followers and it wasn't just James? If they were going to be losing James, they wanted to make sure that other people were you know, lifted up as well. I don't know the answer to that. I could be making it up, but I think it's interesting that James O'Keefe just mentioned Twitter followers.
Hardships, difficult decisions, or just sheer suffering. I don't think people want that. And all through the years, things fundamentally continued on an upward trajectory for this place, albeit turnover. And I'm a hard guy to work for sometimes. We file our annual tax return. A public tax return is required by the IRS. And my compensation is set by an independent board of directors via a compensation committee. 4 times a year, our chief financial officer has submitted company financials to the board. That's every quarter. And our board approves it. in quarterly meetings. All 3 members of the C3 were present, and we have subjected both the C3 and the C4 to audits from outside independent accounting agencies each and every year. That happens. That has always been happening. Nothing about how I've conducted myself over the past 13 years has really fundamentally changed until now. So what has changed in the last 3 weeks? What has changed? The only thing that has changed is that we broke the biggest story in our organization's history. You know that one I'm talking about? Pfizer. The last week of January, with 50 million views. That like broke the record by like 10x. Our video became a global phenomenon. It was about Pfizer and one of the directors discussing mutating the virus. Our confrontation video, where he locked me in a pizza restaurant.
I really appreciate it.
And he smashed the equipment and called the police. That became a phenomenon and was riveting television for our audiences glued to their screens.
That was an amazing video. It was so good.
That was probably one of my favorite things.
It must have been so fun.
It was just really unbelievable. It was like true to be false and seemingly too false to be true, but it was real. If someone else is here, you can let them in. Hello, come on in. Just giving a few remarks to the team here, so you came at the right moment. So the only thing that changed were these videos. Outlets in India and China cover the story, and our social media exploded like never before. Our employees and board members' Twitter accounts also exploded like never before. Pfizer even put out a non-denial denial, like you always capture these things, where they basically admitted they were mutating the virus, albeit they buried this admission in jargon. But it was still an admission. And it was extraordinary that Pfizer responded to us with an admission, not denying that this guy was who he was. What an amazing turn of events. That is the only thing that's changed in 13 years of me being who I am. And then suddenly, an unusual emergency happened just a few days after that. I think we have one more person here, if we could let him in. So suddenly, an unusual...
I want to say, guys, hang on.
And I'm going to take...
I want to say, because I do see people in the chat and like on other platforms too, talking about how they blindly followed the staff of Project Veritas. This is not the fault of most of the staff of Project Veritas. The staff of a lot of the staff at Project Veritas probably do not agree with this. And a lot of the staff at Project Veritas are probably really upset by this. And they're probably reeling right now. So the people who are to blame for this are the board of directors at Project Veritas. It's not the staff. We don't really know who was involved in all of this and who wasn't at the staff level. These are people who believe in something. These are people who work really, really hard. And I just want to make sure to caveat everything with like, this is not the staff's fault. This is the board's fault. And everyone should just be mindful of that and not go after the staff.
Get through this. I'm going to take you through what happened. Some of you don't know these things. Hello. We're talking about the story we broke. An unusual emergency happened. On Thursday, February 2nd, that's a few days after the Pfizer story, I was informed by an officer of Project Veritas on the phone while en route to the airport that he would resign unless I stepped down as CEO. We've been having a conflict of visions, him and I, over fundraising. Are they in fundraising here? I guess no one from fundraising is here. I don't know. There were tactical disagreements about the boldness of approaches soliciting donations. I was told, and I'm paraphrasing, by asking for X dollars right now, you will prevent 10X dollars down the road. That advice ran contrary to everything I knew to be true in my 13 years of fundraising. But that conflict was even more fundamental and essentially boiled down to this. And my vision, I'm going to paraphrase Howard Rourke, the architect, quote, I don't build in order to have donors. I have donors in order to build. That's what I believed, and I felt like we had a conflict of visions. We don't measure our success only in terms of how much money we bring in. We measure our success in terms of our impact. Remember Acorn? I don't think I raised a single dollar off that. I had a stack of media coverage to the ceiling. We measure our success in terms of what we produce, not just in terms of our wallets. That was a pretty fundamental conflict, I felt. The day prior, I had informed him in front of his colleagues that if he wasn't willing to follow my lead, he'd be shown the door. I tried to deal with it privately, but I was unsuccessful, and the disagreement boiled over publicly in a staff meeting.
Oh,
The next day, this individual refused to resign, so I fired him.
Good.
Later that same day, that's Thursday, February 2nd, a few days after the 50 million viewed Pfizer videos, I was informed by a different officer of Project Veritas that he would go to the board in a few hours from that moment and have an emergency vote to restructure this company. Receiving an agenda in my email while I was sitting on an airplane tarmac with the doors.
What James O'Keefe is telling us right now is this was an internal coup. It was an internal coup. This is the CFO, the chief financial officer, and the chief operations officer, one of whom has pronouns in their LinkedIn profile, staging an internal coup against him.
Closing. The meeting was scheduled for the moment that my plane landed in Nashville.
Exactly what I said happened the night that all this broke.
It became clear to me in that moment I would be removed from my position at Project Veritas by the time I landed at my destination. I bet you didn't know that. I have a copy of the emergency meeting here for you guys to take a look at. It's in writing. You could read it. You don't have to be there. You can read the minutes. They're official board minutes. They're written by a lawyer. My first question on the phone to this guy, my colleague, as I was staring at this agenda when the stewardess was asking me to get off the phone, was, quote, "What are we going to tell our supporters if I'm removed from my position?" I think that's the first question. I had 100 questions, but that was the first one. My colleague, who is an officer of Project Veritas, responded by saying, "Our supporters wouldn't have to find out."
Excuse me?
Sounds like something you would get in the Claire McCaskill campaign.
Huh.
It sounds like something you'd expose. I was so shocked by this. And again, the stewardess was asking me to get off the phone. I guess you could say that I was in a state of complete shock. How would our supporters not be informed of such an enormous thing? It was a lapse in judgment so severe that it was itself a fireable offense to make a statement like that. It was a lapse in judgment so severe, it was impossible to hide my removal from my position at Veritas to anybody. As the CEO and chief fundraiser, I have to explain the context of my role to thousands of people.
There is a fiduciary responsibility that the staff at Project Veritas has to the people who fund their organization. James O'Keefe is absolutely correct when he's saying that if an officer of the organization does not want to tell the donors of the organization that they have removed the person that built the organization that most of them donated the money to because of his involvement directly, that is absolutely a fireable offense. 100%. Thank you, Kristen. You were so right. $2 super chats. Carlin was right. Tip jar. Thank you guys for following the honor code. I appreciate it.
People 300 days a year on the road while soliciting them for funds so that I can pay you. And I knew many of our supporters and donors would not like that change. If I was removed from the chief decision maker at the organization I founded, I share who we are, our vision, our structure, our strategy with everybody. In fact, hiding something so fundamental from people is something that we stand against in principle, particularly with the amount of scrutiny that we're under. The doors closed, the plane took off, but somehow, over the next few hours, I was able to convince the board to push this emergency meeting to that Monday, February the 6th. The very next day, and this is where things gets really bizarre. So fasten your seatbelts. The very next day, on Friday, this is now Friday, February 3rd, a board member reached out to one of our journalists and stated, quote, "You get a raise if there is a restructure without James O'Keefe at Project Veritas." I have a copy of the text message, and I'll give it to all of you. I redacted the name of the journalist. The board member deleted the message, but not before our journalist took screenshots.
Good trained journalist there.
Good job, journalist. On Sunday, February 5th, now that's Sunday, 2 days after the Friday, a board member requested my presence at his home. He informed me, quote, "You had nothing to do, James, with this Pfizer story," unquote. Perplexed by this, I took out my iPad and showed him a video of myself confronting the Pfizer executive, which had 11 million views on YouTube. He responded, quote, "But that was after the undercover video had already been done," unquote. I pointed out that the brave journalist, and many of you know who this person is, I'm not going to name anyone, who recorded the interaction was someone that I had to sit down over a year prior, remember, over dinner, for hours, talking off the proverbial ledge, insisting he take the long, arduous road to get the story about Pfizer. And indeed he did.
There is an insane amount of training that must have had to go into Project Veritas journalists. And I don't know exactly how they do it, but I can only imagine that James O'Keefe is the person to personally train every single effing journalist that they have. Because what their journalists do is unbelievable. It really is. They have to know how to handle these situations impromptu. They have to be able to improv. They have to be able to think on their feet. They have to be ballsy as all get out. To say that James O'Keefe had nothing to do with the Pfizer story, I don't care if James O'Keefe was ever on video at all during the Pfizer story. Simple logic tells us that the only reason that they were able to get the Pfizer story was because of the journalistic style that James O'Keefe invented, that he then cultivated and trained an entire team of employees to be able to execute. What he has achieved in training any number of journalists to do what they do is a miracle. And I really hope people understand that. It is not easy to train people to do what Project Veritas employees do. I can barely train people to communicate effectively to the person sitting in the cubicle across the hall. That's how hard people are to train, because people don't like to listen, they don't like to do things differently. It like training people to do anything is extremely difficult. You're telling me this man had nothing to do with it? Please. And that's right. That's probably why he's such a hard boss to work for, because he has high expectations.
The board member responding to me saying that said he did not know that, and admitted that another board member was persuading him to the contrary. In the meeting, we're fast forwarding to Monday, 2 weeks ago. On the 6th, I offered an apology letter to the board for my tone of voice in the office at the leadership meeting the week before, that I intended to also share that apology for my tone of voice with our staff. But the board refused to accept my apology, nor believe that it was sincere. They also did not support my sending it to the staff. I imagine many of you didn't even know that I drafted an apology. Then I was subject to a 6.5-hour listing of grievances, which included taking black cars to meetings. I don't know the significance of the color of the vehicle. And taking a few charter jets over the years to pack multiple PV meetings in a day. One of those jets, I think we had a meeting in New York, Wisconsin, and California in the same day, and it raised $2 million. But the revenue part was omitted. There was also some truly bizarre grievances, including my failure to record audio in one encounter at a bar in upstate New York, and an allegation that I stole a pregnant woman's sandwich in federal court. There were also discussions from a few staffers with donors in the boardroom. Donors were listening to some of this, and some of these were sent directly to donors without my consent. Donors who have no knowledge of my personal life and have no business asking questions about my personal life, about girls I've dated in the past.
Wow.
A fundraising colleague relayed, and again, this is going to start getting really strange, but
Can I just encourage everyone, and I say this as someone who has had lies and gossip spread about her personal life that mostly are really large fabrications from what actually happened. The minute that people start talking about other people's personal lives is the minute that you need to know everything coming out of that person's mouth is bullshit. I'm sorry. Unless someone is responding to something that someone has said about them, like, if someone comes out with, "Did you know they did XYZ?" or "Did you know they like this in bed?" or "Did you know there's this photo of them?" or "Did you know they dated this person?" or "Did you know about their relationship with X, Y, B, and Z?" Blah, 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 blah. They're just doing it to smear people. These things are none of our business. This is why the Jack Murphy thing always kind of left like a really bad taste in my mouth. This is why the Eliza Blue thing leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. This is why anytime someone's personal life gets dragged into it, it is always just about the smear tactic. It's about creating some sort of moral purity test. It's about creating a woke cancel mob. What people do in their personal lives and in their personal communications is no one's business. And I really hope people start using that as like, if someone is putting this stuff out there, they are not the good guy. They're not doing journalism. They're not just telling the truth. They're not bringing receipts. They are engaging in a smear campaign, and that is all that they're doing.
This board meeting was video recorded. We'll get to that in a minute. A fundraising staffer relayed, quote, "concerns about my behaviors regarding videos where I, quote, literally chased a Twitter executive around New York." By acclamation from all of you in 2022, that video about the Twitter chase was one of our most successful videos. But yet your colleagues in a boardroom were expressing concerns about it. Every board member previously communicated their love of that video, but none pushed back in that moment when the staffer criticized it. Why? The attacks were so severe against me personally in that boardroom, and again, this is all video recorded, and I suggest that you ask for that. I will not provide that to you. The attacks were so severe that one board member asked, quote, "Is there anything James O'Keefe is good at?" That's what your board member said. Oh, and by the way, this meeting was video recorded. I'm going to keep saying that. You may want to ask existing board members if they want to share that entire video with you. I suggest you request the entire 7-hour or so video to see for yourself what actually happened.
No, nothing's a violation of labor law.
There. You simply need to
Sadly
watch the video. And
he reports to a board. It's the way it goes.
After the 6 hours, I was asked what I had to say for myself.
I want to see the full video. Well, I will sit here and watch that whole thing.
And then I was dismissed. Then, and I'm reading from board minutes drafted by lawyers who are taking a record of what the board members said and did, a vote was called to strip me of all of my authority and decision-making at this organization for half a year. That's 180 days. Again, it's in the board minutes.
Wow.
It says, quote, "The CEO's ability to make these decisions."
This is another example of Project Veritas lying because they never told us about them stripping him of his power for 180 days. And the executive director who issued the statement last week saying James has absolutely not been stripped of power. He's like they lied again too. Project Veritas, lying effing liars. Except for James O'Keefe.
Suspended for 180 days with such power transferred to the executive director. The executive director reports to the board. The CEO is placed on leave for 2 weeks.
Let's see, free men die free. Can the board be sued for fiduciary responsibility? I mean, I think they probably could be, to be really honest with you. I think that any donor that has given Project Veritas a very significant amount of money probably has a lot of cause to be really pissed right now. And I think that some of them actually did issue a cease and desist letter. So it is not out of the realm of possibility that Project Veritas's own donors are going to sue the shit out of Project Veritas for playing this game. And I hope they win, and I hope they give that money right to James O'Keefe.
And the CEO's access to donors is restricted. So I can't talk to donors. I can't raise money. Let's see. Okay. My first question before I was dismissed, I asked how the remaining team will manage the company and what the plan was. That's something you had said. What's the plan? But they didn't provide one. It was clear they didn't actually have one. And then I was dismissed. So I went off the grid as requested. Went hiking with Kennedy in the mountains. Within a few days of going off the grid, I started receiving missed calls and texts from the same board members and officers who demanded I be gone. They informed the staff that they're waiting to hear from me. I found that odd. There was a corporate resolution demanding that I be gone for 2 weeks. I was a little worried about violating the corporate resolution, wouldn't you? This was while I was commanded by a motion of a board to be literally gone on paid leave for 2 weeks. And then an officer at Project Veritas took a screenshot of my read receipts of text messages and distributed them to you, saying, quote, "You owe your team a response. Please allow communication."
Wow.
This was during the time when I was required.
They were trying to set him up. They were trying to set James O'Keefe up to turn the staff that he still had on his team against him. So this is, I want people to pay attention to this because people on the internet do this crap all the time. They were taking pictures of the text messages to show the staff, oh, look, James is getting our text messages and he's just not responding. He must not really care about this. Aren't you curious about why he doesn't care about this? They're showing it out of context when they're not telling him, when they're not telling the staff that they told him to do this. And now they're trying to trick him into breaking what the board told him to do, or they're going to use it against him to turn the staff against him.
By the board to be gone. Then it's going to get stranger. Then, and again, I'm going to give you copies of all this. Then on February 10th, you guys don't know what I'm about to tell you. Another board meeting occurred. Again, I'm gone. With the meeting's minutes reflecting that they had indefinitely suspended me from the board. By this time, they had stripped me of all of my authority as CEO. During the time I was on leave, they kicked me off the board. So I can't be a CEO if I have no authority. I can't make any decisions. I'm not allowed to access any donor names. I wasn't even sure what my job was or if I even had a job.
God, the donors are going to be so pissed.
Right now, I actually don't. I'm not sure what my job here is. In the board minutes, it says that I no longer have a paycheck and I'm indefinitely suspended from this organization. 5 days later, after that, on February 15th, a statement was put out by this organization, by this organization's executive director, saying, quote, "James has not been removed from Project Veritas."
Exactly. Lie.
5 days after they removed me from Project Veritas. James is the hardest working person I've ever met. Those who know him know he will not take time off unless forced to. Absent from the statement was the actions of the board to remove me from the board and remove me as CEO. I don't know why they omitted that part. Later on the 15th, the same day, while hiking with Kennedy, PV put a statement by quote tweeting a picture of me with him saying, "There is nothing better than enjoying a well-deserved vacation." That tweet failed to mention that by then I had been removed from the board and indefinitely suspended as CEO.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Why
I didn't see
they
that
put
tweet.
That part in? This is where things get really messed up. A few days later, an officer sent an email to the board with bizarre hyperbole and innuendo about certain expenses related to our business needs. These included, and you can't make this up, that Project Veritas paid for James O'Keefe's down payment of his wedding. I got a chuckle out of this. I'm not married. I've never been married. I do hope to get married one day. In fact, I got married to you in Oklahoma, but that was pretend. That was fun. Everyone enjoyed it. We rented a charter bus. We all went down. Everyone enjoyed that musical, or at least I thought. I'm not married, but the truth of the expense, the $12,000, was that it was a payment for our annual Project Veritas Christmas party. Remember that? Where you guys were there? Some of you brought your spouses. The officer lied by omission, excluding the purpose of paying the $12,000 for the wedding venue. It looked like Project Veritas was reimbursing me for a wedding venue. Why would the officer lie like that? There were also, again, bizarre complaints, and this is where you come in, Asha, about taking too many trips to too many meetings. over the course of a year. I think there were like 305 cars I had taken to meetings and donors and journalism assignments, including all the, quote, black cars taken from airports to various meetings. I have a copy of that, so you don't have to take my word for it. The officer stated to the board, this is on February 13th this week, that we should do things such as, quote, reschedule meetings. And the IRS would prefer Zoom meetings over in-person meetings. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. My lawyers got a real laugh out of that one over the last couple of days. And again, I have a copy of these. You can read them for yourselves. The wedding, there's a line item here. It omits the purpose of the expense. It was for a project. You were there. You were dressed in your amazing Christmas clothes. I remember it was beautiful. It was like a Christmas PJ blazer thing you had on.
That was that one.
You were there. It wasn't a wedding. It wasn't a wedding.
Thanks for bringing the outfit.
It was a great outfit. I remember, that was what I remember from that. And we sang "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning," but it wasn't, I didn't get married. It was a Project Veritas Christmas party. Our Christmas party this year cost about twice as much. That one was about $12,000. Okay. And I have the line item here that sent to the board about the black cars. Too many car trips. And by the way, Zoom meetings over in-person meetings is not how you raise money and not how you conduct your journalism. It's hard to get the content over a screen. Ask our journalist if that works to produce a story. In fact, I would maybe ask you guys to ask these guys how you're supposed to do your jobs without taking, quote, black cars around. I don't know how I can do my job here if I can't transport myself around the United States. It actually doesn't make any actual sense, does it? None of this makes any sense. And why is it all happening right now?
Because of Pfizer.
Those are the questions I have. I don't have answers. You guys are journalists. Maybe you can go find the answers. I don't know. After this series of events, I wrote a letter to the board on February 16th with the proposal. Many of you have not seen this, but this is what I sent to them, which I guess they haven't shared this with you, but I'm going to share it with you now. With a proposal that the board members resign by the end of this past week. We're now past that point, or I'll be forced to walk away. And this is what I wrote. Dear board, and I'm not going to provide the whole thing, but I'll provide the meat and potatoes. Over the last 2 weeks, I've carefully followed the board's directive to take a vacation and avoid contacting donors. Of course, donors called me. My phone was being lit up with thousands of phone calls. One donor even, I think, posted a video. She was upset about how she was portrayed in the grievances. Remmers was her name.
Mm-hmm.
She posted a video saying the grievance was a total lie. My understanding is one of the officers of this organization responded to that by calling the donor a liar. The officer wasn't there.
Wow.
Why would the officer call the woman with the sole authority on the matter who was there? Why would he call her a liar?
Why would they call a donor that gave them $75,000? And again, I want to emphasize that particular donor is very well known in the conservative space. Like, everyone I've ever talked to about conservative fundraising knows that particular donor because they are wonderful people and they are very strong supporters of conservative causes. Why is a Project Veritas board member calling her a liar?
I don't know the answer to that question. Your actions over the same period to undermine Veritas and its...
Let me tell you this. I'm almost personally offended for her because of all the people that I have met in the conservative space, that woman and her husband are two of the most authentic, genuine, kind people that I have met in the last 3 years. I think she's great. And I don't even know that woman would be able to lie if James had put her up to it, because that's like she's like me. She says what she thinks. Oh God, that is so offensive to me.
Future, including airing confidential employment matters publicly, has broken trust. I cannot, in good conscience, return to such a mismanaged organization. I have not responded privately or publicly because there is no rational, appropriate response for the emotional circus that has been created by your actions. I expect the board to resign by the end of the week. Project Veritas, including any employees who choose to stay, will go on under my leadership with newly appointed professional board members and officers prepared to exercise their duty of care and duty of loyalty to the organization. That's what a board does. They exercise duty of loyalty and duty of care. What they shouldn't do is try to destroy an organization. That's not what a board member does. I will return to work on Monday, that's today, and work with the remaining team to go forward with our mission. Short of this action, I cannot, in good faith, return to the employment of an organization with leaders who are attacking me personally, making false and unsupported claims of improper management of resources about weddings and black cars, improperly airing employment issues related to me and others at Project Veritas. I did not leak that document, and I would swear to it under oath. But it probably wasn't the best idea to march employees into a boardroom. That's never happened in any boardroom in the history of boardrooms. And that's one of the reasons why our donors are so upset. That doesn't happen. Ruining our reputation in front of supporters and donors and leaking confidential information and fabricating stories. One of our ethical rules is we don't lie to our audience. I've never lied to our audience in 13 years. But I was stripped of all decision-making last week. And you guys
This is so upsetting.
Lying to your audience.
This is so upsetting.
And there's nothing I could do about it. Because I was stripped of all my decision-making. I was removed from CEO. I was asked to be gone until the 20th. It is now the 20th. I asked the board to resign for their conduct, and they did not. So currently, I have no job at Project Veritas. I have no position here based upon what the board has done. So I'm announcing to you all that today on President's Day, I'm packing up my personal belongings here. I don't really have much in this room that belongs to me. I guess a painting, a diploma, some personal things. It won't fill much. Maybe it'll fill my Kia. I'm packing up my personal, I'm starting to get emotional, from headquarters, and I'm intending to start anew. I don't have the answers to why they've been doing this, or why board members were going directly to employees to collect grievances on the week of our biggest story ever, or why our board members were going to employees directly to discuss removing me from this organization, even saying I'll give you a raise if James is removed. That might be illegal. I don't know. But why would they do it the week of our biggest story ever? But I'm confident that those reasons and motivations will come to light. To borrow an old expression, the public has a right to know what has happened here and why there was a concerted effort to remove me from the organization I founded the same week of our biggest story ever had. Almost done. This is very difficult. And I'm filming this for the staff. You know, sorry you couldn't be physically here, but this is for internal distribution.
He knew it would get leaked. I'm sorry. He knew it. He knew it.
Many of you. I never said it, those words, but I'll say it now. I want to go back to the beginning of what I said and express how important so many of you are to me. How I still believe we have a long and bright future together somehow, some way. And to share my profound appreciation for many of you. When I left the office, and this is where I'm going to get emotional, so please forgive me. When I left the office on February 6th, after being stripped of all my authority, I saw my father and I gave him a hug, realizing just how honest and real of a man he is. Both my parents are as genuine and down to earth as a son could ever have. It's true, you never really know someone until you go through hell with them. You see, back in the carriage house 13 years ago, the feds would come to my home to make sure that I was inside my house, administering random drug tests and rifling through my expenses to make sure I wasn't lying about the strawberry ice cream I bought at 7-Eleven. I didn't have any money, but they went through my debit card statements and tried to get me to sign things to prove I wasn't lying. There were federal agents showing up at my parents' house. There were no donors. There were no supporters. And I was not trending on Twitter. My father went through this hell with me and stood up to those bullies on the front lawn and told them to stop harassing our family. And at that point, that's all I had was him. I was otherwise completely alone. I will never forget that. Now the good news, we're no longer alone. We have millions of Americans who also know who I am. In fact, in fact, you have, and we all have watched their overwhelming support. They see the truth. They know who I am. I also know many of you know who I am, and you know what's right? You know, you're people of principle here, people in this room, and this now may be your moment of truth. One of you called me from a closet the day of the 7th after I was suspended, the day after I was let go, and you were crying. I never heard that tone before. I told you it was going to be okay. You were afraid of what was happening here. You said, this is really hard to take. I can't take this anymore. I told you that I struggled alongside you, although I wasn't physically there. I told you that I loved you. A number of us told each other that we loved one another. It was the first time I've shared that sentiment with a colleague. It was a very real moment, a very beautiful moment, a touching moment where we were bound together. Many of us were really bound together in that moment, and I was grateful for that. I recognize just how honest and real many of you are in your souls, that you are amazing people. We have some really amazing people here, with men with brass balls and women with the courage of a lion. And it really, what I drew from this experience is the gratitude that I have, you know, for so many of you. And as I was going through this horrible pain, where I lost 8 pounds and couldn't sleep for 5 days, I was actually overcome with this amazing gratitude. True story. I was really feeling it, and I'm grateful for that, because I've experienced something I never have, because I saw the goodness in many of you that I did not previously see. So I amend the statement that I made in the beginning of this. The statement I made before was Veritas will never be defeated from the outside. It will only be defeated from the inside. That's actually not true. No, the only way to defeat us is if they take our spirit. And from the looks of things, many of us remain completely undefeated and unbroken. So our mission continues on. I'm not done. The mission will perhaps take on a new name, and it may be no longer called Veritas, Project Veritas. I'll need a bunch of people around me, and I'll make sure you know how to find me. And I'll quote when you invited me to New York City and did that little stand-up, how fitting that from Shakespeare, quote, "And this story shall the good man teach his son. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers and sisters." So with that, I'm going to collect my things. I'm going to load them into my car. And I hope to see some of you soon.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow. I cannot believe they did this to him. No, I take that back. I can absolutely believe they did this to him. I can absolutely believe they did this to him. This is why people can't have nice things. I agree with James that I don't think that this is going to be the end. I think that this is going to be the beginning. Like I said at the very beginning, this is like when Steve Jobs got fired from Apple. And sometimes you need to have everything stripped away in order to do the thing that you came here to do. But good for him for showing people what really happened. Good for him for bringing the receipts. I hope we get to watch that 6-hour board meeting that was recorded someday. And I want everyone to know that this is why this type of thing is the singular reason why I would never go to work for an organization, because this stuff happens all the time. The next thing I want to do is I want to read Mike Cernovich's response to this, because Mike Cernovich pretty much said I think he said this he has the same idea, and I want to read this from his Substack, which is mikecernovich.substack.com. And let's just see what he had to say about this. James O'Keefe is out at Project Veritas. Much to my disappointment, people connected the ousting to the Pfizer release. Pfizer, the theory goes, had China launch a spy balloon as a distraction for the Project Veritas release, and then the Project Veritas board ousted O'Keefe to protect Pfizer. This is nuts and shows a total lack of real-world business sophistication. I don't disagree with Mike Cernovich on that. James O'Keefe lost his company to a tale as old as time: talent versus suits. It's not surprising at all that James O'Keefe lost Project Veritas. Founders are regularly ousted from their own companies. Here's how it plays out. Talent wants to build and create. They don't want to manage operations or do paperwork. Talent creates value. Suits don't have creative talent. They can manage bank accounts and balance sheets. Suits capture value. You need both value creation and value capture. Consider this humble Substack. I enjoy writing. I've left an amount of money that makes me sick to my stomach to think about on the table, as I didn't want to set up paywalls or back-end infrastructure. I can completely identify with that. Suits are good at that, but my experience as a lawyer has shown me that working with suits usually ends in litigation. I also agree with that. And he's got a tweet here from February 10th. If you wonder why I never took financial backing from anyone, the James O'Keefe situation shows why. You have more impact usually when you allow the suits in. The Faustian bargain is that they will steer messaging, and if you don't comply, will drive you out of your company completely. Guys, just as an interlude, this is why I am completely funded by you through my Substack, through my Patreon, through my locals, through people who are kind enough to become a paying supporter on any of those platforms. It's not that I never got offers to go work with another organization. It's not that I never got offers for funding. I have a stream of funding if I ever really need it, but I really hope I never have to take it because of this exact issue. So if you want to subscribe to my Substack, carlin.substack.com, for $5 a month, $50 a year, more if you want to, that would be great. Suits come in two kinds. Group one are the guys you want to be with. They are money men. They never wanted to be actors or content creators. They want you to make money and they want to cut. They'd be as happy managing your music or political career as they would your tile flooring business. They couldn't care less what it is that makes you hot. To them, you're a widget. This seems inhuman. It's the opposite. These are the best guys, as they don't want to jam you up. Group two are frustrated talent. The suits believe that, but for the accident of fate, they would have been the talent. Herein lies the problem. And this is a tweet he sent on February 10th. If you have a big ego, it's hard to play a supporting role for an all-star like James O'Keefe. This is the never-ending struggle founders of companies face. Jealous VCs sabotage companies and make them and take them away from the founders. Talents versus suits. He's right. Talent is attracted to the frustrated suits as they speak the same language. Let's do art and make money together. Talent would rather be around people like them versus the boring money men who work on their spreadsheets and go home to their families and are in bed by 9 p.m. This is a huge mistake. Ego sets in. Suits who are frustrated talent want to direct the talent. The talent resists. Suits know how to play the game. They know that all you need to do to win the turf war with talent is to flip the board of directors against the talent or select your own board of directors while the talent is busy. This is why I wrote this piece for my Substack when this all started happening, explaining that the nonprofit business model was the thing that got James O'Keefe in trouble in the first place, because nonprofit business models require you to have a board. By the way, they also put you in bed with the government and give the government greater access to everything that you're doing. So, but the flip side of that, and the reason people do it, is it allows you to raise a metric F ton of money. It is extraordinarily difficult to raise the amount of money that James O'Keefe wanted and needed to raise without being a nonprofit. But the downside of that is you get put beholden to a board that can quite literally steal your company from you. So it's kind of like, which devil do you want? The devil that I've chosen is that I'm going to build my Unwoke empire as a private business model that I control 100% of. I will never have a board of directors. I will never have anyone over top of me with the empire that I'm creating. And I really hope that James O'Keefe goes the same way. Now, that's a little bit more tricky. You have to be entrepreneurial about it. You have to sell value, solicit donations and for subscriptions and things like that, which is exactly what I'm doing on my Substack, but it is doable. And once you do it, you are in a much better position to never, ever, 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 ever have your work stolen from you. One way this is done is via a donor. Suit. Talent. We have a huge donor who wants to come in. Talent. Great. Suit. They want a board seat. Talent. Sure thing. Because talent doesn't understand the business, they get rolled without realizing it. That's what happened to James O'Keefe. Pfizer didn't take over Project Veritas. You should not read people saying such nonsense. I'm not sure I 100% agree with that, but I agree with a lot of what he's saying. I agree with a lot of what he's saying. I guess we'll find out at some point. Either they're lying or they lacked basic background knowledge. Nothing I wrote in this little stack would be controversial to any big name artist to lawyer who has handled business partnerships. He's got a tweet here basically saying they were removed by Project Veritas. He doesn't believe that. Guys who think they are the next James O'Keefe get in via promising donors. They take over the board and James is gone. What's the lesson for talent? Work with money men. The ones who don't really care about what you do nor understand. If they're boring, even better. Then be talent. Create value. Let the soups capture it. Win, win. So I think Mike Cernovich is absolutely correct about this. We now know that it was the two employees that James O'Keefe fired, the CFO and the COO, who were the people driving this coup internally at Project Veritas. Malia, thank you for the super chat. I started watching late, so this may be out of context, but Carlin, I want to talk to you about whenever I have drama to discuss because your reactions are the best. Thank you, Malia. I appreciate that. I think the whole thing is very sad, guys, but I want everyone to rest assured that James O'Keefe is going to be just fine. I said this at the beginning, but he will be just fine. And I was kind of, I was of two minds on whether or not I was going to say unsubscribe to Project Veritas, stop funding Project Veritas, because the fact of the matter is there's always more going on internally than we know. And I had kind of left just a little bit of space for the idea that maybe James was more at fault. Maybe. Because again, like I said, there's no doubt in my mind that James O'Keefe is an asshole. But still, that never usurped. I always thought James O'Keefe should be in charge of Project Veritas, and it's not even like unclear to me that that's true. But I left a little bit of space. I was like, you know what? Maybe there's stuff going on that I don't know about. Who knows? And if there's more going on, then we're going to find out. But now I am absolutely saying for 100% sure, unsubscribe from Project Veritas. Email Project Veritas. Tell them to F off. Not the normal staff, because again, this is not the normal staff's problem, but the board of directors. I cannot believe that they thought that they could get away with this. This is beyond. But the sad reality is this is the type of bullshit that happens in the conservative space all the time. And I'm sure it happens in the lefty space too. I'm sure it does, because I've seen this stuff in corporations. I've seen this stuff in nonprofits. I've seen it all over the place. So I'm not specifically saying this is a problem that is only for conservatives. But what I will say is that over the past 3 years, I have seen a lot more of garbage like this than I ever care to see again in my life. Do not support organizations that are showing you that they're going to lie to you, that are just trying to take your money. I can list off probably enough organizations to fill up my fingers and my toes right now in the conservative space that bullshit like this happens at. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to get sued. But almost every major organization in the conservative space does crap like this. And that's why, if I had to give you guys advice, and I know this sounds self-serving, support independent creators. Do not give your money to the Daily Wire. Do not give your money to Moms for Liberty. Do not give your money to FAIR. Do not give your money to Walkaway. Do not give your money to Gays Against Groomers. Do not give your money to any of these shill organizations that are only doing it to make money. Because the reality is that these organizations are not going to solve the problem. Not in the way they're run. The only people that can solve problems are people that are coming to it from a deeply principled perspective. James O'Keefe, I absolutely believe. James O'Keefe came up under Andrew Breitbart, man. James O'Keefe is absolutely coming to it from a principled perspective. And because he was so focused on principle and so focused on creating value, that's when they got him out. Because that's what they do. That's what they do. So I've unfollowed all of them. I hope you've unfollowed all of them. And I hope that they get the message. And, I'm just going to keep trucking forward. And I think James O'Keefe is. And shout out to all the independent creators who have never bowed down to this bullshit, because being independent is a lot harder. It really is. It is a lot harder. But at least you know that no board is ever going to come in and steal your shit. And that's just the way it goes. All right, guys, with that out of the way, I want to quickly talk about the Oompa Loompa story. As I promised, these two stories are totally unrelated. If you came for Project Veritas, stay for the Oompa Loompas, man. I promise this is going to make you laugh. This is ridiculous. This is boneheaded. It's also scary and really, really, really effing dystopian. This is so dystopian. I have recently decided that I'm going to become like the real life dystopian writer. I'm just going to tell you things that are happening in real life, and I'm going to explain to you why they are so effing dystopian. Check this out. The Oompa Loompas are now non-binary. This actually came originally from a report that I saw on Fox, but I think it originally came from The Telegraph in the UK. Roald Dahl's children's books are being rewritten to delete references to fat characters and add inclusive gender terms. I did a little bit differently on my Substack, though, because I always want to explain to you guys the context of why this is happening, why this real life dystopia is existing, and I'm going to tell you why. So what places like Fox News are going to say is that Roald Dahl's publisher, because Roald Dahl is dead and his family sold the rights to his books to a publisher. And so what they're going to say is the publisher hired sensitivity readers, and those sensitivity readers are just taking out offensive language. They're taking out things calling little kids fat. They're taking out things calling women having a horse face. They're taking out stuff that like is the basis of the charm of any of these books, which is that kids are mean little shits, to be honest. We all know that. And so they're removing all these offensive language to make the kids less offensive. But I'm going to tell you what the real reason is that they're doing all this. Because they are screwing with language in children's literature so that they can gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. So I want to read from this Substack, and let me just pop the link in the article. And that way you can go read the Fox News article if you want, but this is my take. The Oompa Loompas are non-binary. The publishers of Roald Dahl's books are making changes to them to remove gendered language and any language that might offend the fragile sensibilities of the parents who are trying to shield their little darlings from ever hearing the word fat. Come on, you know it's not the children who are demanding this. And I really want to make this clear because Roald Dahl's publisher put a statement out where they basically said, "We regularly update books to make sure they can be enjoyed by all generations into the future." Do you think kids that are reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory have a problem with Augustus Gloop being called fat? Part of Augustus Gloop's story arc is that he's a fat kid that got sucked into a pipe of chocolate because he was so fat that he fell into the chocolate river and couldn't stop eating the chocolate. And he got stuck in the pipe because he was so fat, and the pressure built up behind him until he shot through the pipe. That was part of the entire flipping point. Do you think it's the children who are offended by that? No, it's their Karen mothers who are now Karening the publisher because they don't want their little darlings to be exposed to anything that could possibly be offensive. But my favorite change that they made was to the Oompa Loompas. They're making the Oompa Loompas non-binary. The Oompa Loompas in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory were once described by Dahl as small men. But now they are known in the rewritten books as small people. Summarily, in James and the Giant Peach, the Cloud Men are now known as cloud people. Why might they be doing that? Why might they be removing gender from children's books? Well, I have a theory. And what I'm about to say is going to piss some people off. So I'm just going to warn you. Like I'm asking you to let me explain fully why I care about this sort of thing way more than I care about sexually explicit books in school. I care about this way more than I care about genderqueer. Okay? Genderqueer, the sexually explicit books, that's the distraction. That's like the magician's assistant. It's the flashy thing that you're like, ooh, look at that thing twirling across the stage. And when you're looking at the flashy, shiny thing twirling across the stage, the magician is over here and he's doing the trick, but he knows you're distracted by the flashy, shiny thing twirling across the stage, and he knows you're not seeing him do the real trick over here. The porn in schools, genderqueer, these sexually explicit books in schools are the flashy magician's assistant. The changing of the gendered language is the magician, and it's the real trick. Let me explain. I'm worried more about this sort of thing than I am about sexually explicit books in schools. Before you start calling me a groomer, as someone inevitably will, allow me to explain. I'm not suggesting I believe sexually explicit books in school libraries are a good thing, but I also believe that those books are a distraction and that banning them just makes the problem worse. Remember, kids used to hide Playboys under their bed, and most of them can easily access far more sexually explicit materials on the internet than they can in school libraries, and everyone survived. The woke left is slowly transitioning, no pun intended, language to remove all references to gender, and this is a much larger problem. When you change language, you change how people think and how they perceive the world. If kids don't know the words for man and woman it's going to be very easy to convince them that the gender binary doesn't exist. The revolution that the woke left wants has less to do with sex than it has to do with fundamentally dismantling the foundations of our way of life. And I really just want to pause on this and explain this, because a lot of people think that grooming is just about like getting kids introduced to overtly sexually explicit material when they're young and all that stuff. And I'm not suggesting that doesn't happen, because it does. But the far more dangerous grooming is the non-gendered language. And we know this because we watch woke trainings every Friday on this channel at 5 p.m. We watch Socialism Saturday every Saturday on this channel starting at 6 p.m. They hardly ever talk about sex. They very rarely talk about sex. But you know what they do talk about? Dismantling the gender binary. And the reason they want to dismantle the gender binary is to get rid of all men and women, to dismantle gender entirely, to create a world full of theys. As previously discussed, this is because they want to eliminate the gender binary entirely to create a world full of non-binary people who see themselves as neither man or woman. This is what equity looks like. Let me just get you a link to this art. What the hell? Huh, that's not working. Let's see if that link works. Aha! Let me get you a link to that article. I will pop it in the chat so you guys can go and read it for yourself. Because trans, this is something we've learned on Socialism Saturday, trans no longer means transition. It means transform, as in transform gender, as in transform society. If you want to fundamentally transform society to eliminate gender, you do that by making small changes to the language over time, ones that are so subtle that most people don't notice, much less call them out. Think of the classic example of what happened when you put a frog in a pot of boiling water. The frog will hop right out. However, if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water and if you put a frog in a pot of cold water and bring it to a boil, the frog will sit there until it boils to death, because it does not know it's in danger until it's too late. In our example, sexually explicit books are like throwing the frog in a pot of boiling water. It's a distraction that grabs everyone's attention and removes the focus from the real issue. And the frog is just going to jump out right away anyway. Removing gendered language is putting the frog in a pot of cold water and bringing it to a boil slowly. This is the thing that will kill us. And if you want more, I have a whole podcast on it, which you can find embedded in the article if you so desire. And I really hope, listen, this is kind of funny, right? It's so silly. It's like they're changing things. And let's look at some of the other things they're changing. Augustus Gloop, the chubby character referenced in featured in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, is now described as enormous instead of fat. And Miss Twit, a character from the Twits, is described as just beastly instead of ugly and beastly. In James and the Giant Peach, the character Miss Sponge is no longer described as the fat one. Miss Spider's head is not black anymore, and the earthworm has given up its lovely pink skin for lovely smooth skin. They changed that the earthworm was white. This is actually one of my favorite ones because I love the witches. The Witches might be my all-time favorite Roald Dahl story. Don't get me wrong, I like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's fine, but I think I always preferred The Witches because, I kind of like that sort of thing. Check this out. In Dahl's The Witches, first published in 1983, a paragraph noting that witches are bald beneath their wigs includes a new line that reads, "There are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there is certainly nothing wrong with that." Another passage from The Witches that originally described a fat little brown mouse has been changed to a little brown mouse, and a section who used to be "Here's your little boy," she said, "He needs to go on a diet," has been altered to read, "Here's your little boy." So, this seems silly, and it's ridiculous, and a lot of people are actually really upset about this, which I take a little bit of, it's good that people are upset over it. I want people to be upset over it. But I want you to understand, too, that this is actually an important thing. The left knows how to do the long, slow march. The left knows how to do the long, slow march better than anyone. They've been doing it for 50 years. And what they do is a battle of inches. The left is not going to come up and hit you right in the face. The left is going to inch towards you a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And they're going to take their time, and they will wait months, years, decades if they have to. This is how they took over the schools. It was an inch at a time. And so it might seem a little thing to say they made the Oompa Loompas non-binary. And isn't that funny? Because let's be honest, they kind of look a little bit non-binary anyway. They do. But that's what the Battle of Inches looks like. And that is how they are able to make so much progress over the long run. And all of us are sitting here and looking back and going, what the hell happened? They didn't take over the schools overnight. They did it bit by bit. They took over professor jobs in the colleges of education. They started teaching all the classes in the colleges of education where the teachers are trained. Then once they trained the teachers, they got the teachers into schools. Then they started taking over the classrooms. Then they started getting those teachers into schools promoted into administrator positions because administrators in schools set policy. And then they started getting those administrators in school into the state boards of education, and the state boards of education set policy. And before you know it, your kids are learning that they are evil because of the way that they were born in kindergarten. They're starting to be taught that they may not be the gender they were born as in first grade. This didn't happen overnight. It was the Battle of Inches. And this is just another inch. So, that's all I have for you today, guys. Thank you for spending some time with me. I will be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow for my next stream. And I want to let everyone know that if you are a paying supporter on my Substack, what I want you to do is to go to the Unwoke Roundup. This is a weekly email that I do that, yep, that is the right one, that if you are a paid supporter on my Substack and if you want to support the work I'm doing, please consider a gift of $5 a month, $50 a year. That helps keep me in business. And what I want you to do if you end up becoming a paid supporter is scroll all the way down to the bottom. Scroll all the way down to the bottom until you find this section called Supporter Perks. And underneath Supporter Perks, if you are a paid supporter, you are going to find a link that is a Zoom link that you can click to join my private community supporter call, which is starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I do 2 private, unrecorded supporter Zooms every single week. We do them on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We do them on Wednesdays at noon. You can find the information in the supporter link in the Substack. If you are a member of my locals or my Patreon, I will be posting the Zoom link shortly, so you can have it there as well. And you can also find a link to join my supporter Discord, which we do movie night. We had a great movie night last week, or yesterday, actually. We watched A Little Chaos. It was an awesome movie. This week for movie night, we're watching one of my favorite all-time movies, which is Warm Bodies. Has anyone seen Warm Bodies? It's like a zombie love story. It's so good. We are watching Warm Bodies in my supporter Discord on Sunday at 8 p.m. If you subscribe to my Substack, you can join us for the Zoom call starting in about 15 minutes. You can join us for movie night on Sunday. And again, if you are in my locals as a paying supporter or my Patreon, you will be getting the links shortly. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. Thank you for hanging out, and I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Mount that like button on your way out the door. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Take care, and we'll see you soon.